Dajiaha, and welcome everybody. Welcome to the class number 5 entitled XD, Explanation of Concept, Major Artist and Impact on Audience. We will talk about XD or cross-dimension in this class, and we will talk about not only what does art mean, but where art can be placed, or what arts can be, how art can interact with the audience. Even Marcel Duchamp, at the beginning of the 20th century, said that the artist is creating his work in the studio, but an artwork cannot be completed fully until it's been placed in a museum or in a gallery. We will see in this class that artists can also place their artwork outside the gallery or outside the museum. We will see how artists, by placing their art outside the museum, can interact with the audience. Or sometimes the audience, the viewer, can also be a part of the artwork and can not only be the spectator, the viewer of the artwork, but can also be a major part of the artwork. So when I say cross-dimension, that also means that artists can also, through different practice, through 2D, 3D or 4D, can work across all this medium. And by this fact, it can be difficult for the viewer to understand what exactly it is. It can be a mix of everything. But once again, the artist wants to ask the viewer some question, not only what does art mean, but also what is the relation to the audience, what is the impact on audience when the viewer can also be the actor. Like, for example, there is some installation, we're going to see some of them, where the viewer entering a museum or outside the museum or the gallery can be a part of this installation, and at the same time it can also be considered as a performance. But before we start really to talk about XD, let's have a look at the University of London, at the St. Martin's College, some example of students' work who are actually working in the XD department. Let's have a look.
Move it, Babylon!
We will see that even if major artists such as Yayoi Kusama, Louise Bourgeois, Daniel Buren, or Jean Dubuffet, or Henry Moore, or Salvatore Dali, or even Jeff Koons already has put large-scale sculpture outside the museum, we will see how some artists can choose a specific site to create an artwork. When we talk about XD, some people can be referring this to interactive art or site-specific art. When I say site-specific art, that means that an artwork has been chosen, has been created, designed especially for an environment. That the artist has created an artwork just for this place, just for this environment, just for this location. The first artist we will talk about, his name is called Christo. He worked all his life with his wife, Jeanne-Claude, and they do what we can call site-specific artwork. So we will see that their major art pieces are when they wrapped monuments of famous landmarks around the world. We will see that they work on the Reichstag in Berlin, Germany, but they also worked in America, they also work in Italy, creating major and amazing art pieces that actually is beautifully made, and it's only made for this place, this location. The viewer can actually see it, but in some case, we will see when he made this floating path on the lake in Italy, the viewer can also be a part of this artwork. That's why I was talking to you about also interactive art, that the viewer is not only looking at an art piece like in a museum or in a gallery, but can be a part of it. So let's have a look at some Christo and Jeanne-Claude artworks. The next artist we're going to talk about is Chinese. His name is Ai Weiwei. He's very famous in Western countries, especially in America and in Europe. And in this case, he didn't choose to place his artwork outside the gallery or outside the museum, but inside, but in a very, very creative way. He decided to make millions and millions and millions sunflower seeds and to place it inside Tate Modern in London, in UK. So when I was talking to you about what we can call immersive art, meaning that people are in immersion, that they are a part of the artwork, that without the audience, the artwork doesn't have the same meaning. In this case, Ai Weiwei asked many technicians in Jingdezhen, in Jiangxi province in China, to make ceramic sunflower seeds, and he placed all these sunflower seeds inside the Tate Gallery. So people were walking on it, people were playing with these sunflower seeds, people were interacting with it. So that's also a good example of what can be XD, what can be what we call site-specific art, or immersive art, or interactive art. So let's have a look of Ai Weiwei sunflower seeds at the Tate Modern Museum in London.
We're currently sitting on a landscape of sunflower seeds, and the artist has created a project that people can actually walk on and interact with. So you're invited to come and walk on the surface, pick up the seeds, and discover that in fact they are not real sunflower seeds, but ceramic sunflower seeds which have been individually hand painted and crafted. Ai Weiwei began testing and experimenting in the city of Jingdezhen in southern China about 2 years ago, and this is where all imperial porcelain was produced. So he's using very traditional methods of production to create the sunflower seeds and working with highly skilled artisans in that area. There are approximately 1,600 people who've been involved in making the sunflower seeds, and there are 100 million sunflower seeds here. I think by now people are very familiar with art being presented in the Turbine Hall, and we would of course ask them not to take the seeds, because although there are 100 million seeds, we want everybody to enjoy the work in the form that was created by the artist. So although we do expect 2 million visitors over the next 6 months, we would ask them not to take seeds. The Turbine Hall is an open space, so there is no fee to come and participate in it. And we hope that over the next 6 months people will come and engage with the work, but also take part in Ai Weiwei's online discussions, because he's an artist who really believes in communicating directly with people and is an avid user of Twitter. And we've set up a one-to-one booth, a video recording booth here, where people can actually upload a question for Ai Weiwei, and he will directly respond with a video question. So we're hoping that there'll be an online discussion that takes place over the next 6 months.
something.
Sunflower seeds is the most common object in China. No wonder where you are, or poor, or rich, or remote area, or in the city.
What was your reaction when you first saw your work installed in the turbine?
I was quite shocked. I mean, that's something about artwork. It's nothing you really just can talk about it. You have to really experience it.
How long did it take to make this?
The total length is about 2.5 years.
The next artist I wanted to talk to you about's name is Florentin Hoffmann. Florentin Hoffmann is famous for creating this gigantic rubber duck. It's a simple yellow duck that people use normally to put in their bathtub when they take a bath. But he decided to make a large, gigantic scale rubber duck and to place it across the world. It has been displayed and shown on Victoria Harbour in Hong Kong, as well as in Sydney in Australia, and in many other places. So we will see an interview of Florentin Hoffmann explaining to you what's the concept of his artwork. But what is interesting with the work of Florentin Hoffmann is that not only he places his artwork outside the gallery in the museum, because obviously his piece of art is too big, too huge to enter a museum or a gallery. But what is interesting is that because of this kind of artist, art is not only for people who are passionate about art, not only for people who are interested about art and wants to go inside the museum or the gallery. In this case, everybody can have access to art. Everybody can see this piece of art. And so we will see this, you will see this gigantic rubber duck floating. And as Florentin Hoffmann said in his interview, it's a kind of surrealistic idea that the entire world is a bathtub where this gigantic rubber duck is floating. So let's have a look at this work.
Onlookers at Hong Kong's iconic Victoria Harbour must have thought they'd gone quackers when this giant inflatable duck floated into view on Thursday. The 6-storey rubber ducky is the work of Dutch artist Florentin Hoffmann, who believes that it carries a message to be conscious of one another and the environment.
Well, it means that we're living on one planet, we're one family, and all the waters in the world is our global bathtub. And it joins people together, it makes us family, and it also means that we have to take care of each other, and be responsible about this planet as you are responsible about your own house in Bath. So that's the idea.
While it may sound like he's having a bath, plenty of people joined together to welcome the inflatable avian to Hong Kong, including Jane Yu, who was watching with her 2-year-old daughter.
Oh, she is very happy because it's very huge, and we've never seen a huge duck in a harbour.
Hoffmann's duck has already made trips to Osaka, Sydney, Sao Paulo and Amsterdam, but this marks its first visit to Greater China. The duck will stay docked in Harbour City until June 9th, after which it will be off to visit the USA and the Middle East.
When we talk about the impact on audience, on where we talk about interactive art, or the interaction between the viewer, the spectator and the artist, we often refer to performance, because most performers are actually performing in front of an audience. And in some case, they ask the people in the audience to interact with their work. That was the case when Yoko Ono creates cut pieces. Yoko Ono, you remember in the 1960s, she was sitting in a room and she was wearing a piece of clothes and she was asking people to come. She was asking randomly people in the audience to come and to cut some part of her clothes. So we will have a little look at Yoko Ono's artwork, but let's talk more about Marina Abramovich. Marina Abramovich, we already talked about her in the class number 4, is one of the most famous performance artists or performers. In this artwork called The Artist is Present, you will see that the interaction between her as an artist and anybody who wants actually to sit in front of her makes that the art is available for everybody. That everybody can say, for the luckiest people who had the chance to sit in front of Marina Abramovich, they can say, I was, for a little time, for a few minutes, I was a part of Marina Abramovich artwork. So in this case, this piece of art is very interesting, and I wanted to show it to you. Let's have a look at Marina Abramovich. The artist is present, but let's have a look first of Yoko Ono cut pieces.
It's number one.
I want to show you the one who really changed my life. And this was the performance in MoMA, which just recently I made. This performance, when I said to the curator, I was just going to sit at the chair, and there will be empty chair in the front, and anybody from the public can come and sit as long as they want. The curator said to me, that's ridiculous. You know, this is New York. This chair will be empty. Nobody have time to sit in the front of you. But I sit 3 months. And I sit every day 8 hours, the opening of the museum, and 10 hours on Friday when the museum is open, 10 hours, and I never move. And I remove the table, and I'm still sitting. And this changed everything. This performance, maybe 10 or 15 years ago, will nothing happen. But the need of people to actually experience something different. The public was not anymore the group. Relation was one-to-one. I was watching these people. They would come and sit in front of me, but they have to wait for hours and hours to get to this position. And finally, they sit. And what happened? They are observed by other people. They are photographed. They are filmed by the camera. They are observed by me. And they are nowhere to escape except in themselves. And that makes a difference. there was so much pain and loneliness. There's so much incredible things when you look in somebody else's eyes. Because in the gaze, without total stranger, that you never even say one word, everything happened. And I understood when I stood up from that chair after 3 months, I'm not the same anymore. And I understood that I have a very strong mission, that I have to communicate this experience to everybody. And this is how, for me, was born the idea to have Institute of Immaterial Performing Arts.
May I have your attention, please? The museum is now closed. Please return your normal audio program units to the desk on the ground floor and collect your belongings.
If we talk about immersive art, or the way that the artists, not as before, were actually standing in front of an art piece that could be a two-dimensional art piece, such as a painting, a collage, or a drawing, or a three-dimensional, such as a sculpture or installation, or four-dimensional, such as a video set. Immersive art, in some way, is much more entertaining and much more, how could I say, it creates, as it says, as the word immersion, it's literally puts the viewer and the audience inside the artwork. We're going to see three different artists that really push the limits of immersive art. And we will start with Yaoi Kusama, who create the Infinity Mirrors Room, which is a very interesting art piece. Yaoi Kusama, a well-known artist. We talk about Yaoi Kusama in the third class when we were talking about sculpture. And we will see also the work of Leandro Eldrich, who created the swimming pool. You probably have seen it. It's a very famous installation. It's an installation, but it's also, it's once again the borders between installation, between like, it can be very thin. And we will also talk about the rain room. The rain room is obviously they're using a lot of technology, but it's also very interesting immersive art pieces. We will see it. It's extremely interesting. I've seen it. I've seen it in London, but it has been placed also in Shanghai, in the westbound. I remember that. So you're going to see the rain room is technically it's extremely interesting. It's simply a room where it's literally raining, as the name indicates. But there are sensors everywhere. That means that when you walk through the room, you actually don't get wet. So that's also very interesting. Thomas Saraceno is also a very interesting artist who creates an immersive situation for the viewer and for the audience. But in this case, the audience can also climb, like walk, like be a part of the installation, which once again can be seen as something else, as an installation artwork. So let's have a look at Yaoi Kusama Infinity Mirror Rooms. Let's have a look at Leandro Eldrich swimming pool and the rain room.
It's like basically like a massive sprinkler system, which with individually controllable nozzles, sprinkler nozzles, and a big grid of sensors which detect the presence of a human body, and then they switch off the sprinkler above that human body in a dynamic fashion. So if you move around, that patch of dry moves with you.
We were a bit surprised by how many people experience it through their mobile phones rather than the experience themselves. So if it hasn't been on Facebook, it doesn't exist.
A lot of the stuff that happened around Rain, that developed around Rain, the queuing, this phenomenon, the selfie, the Instagrammability and so on, that was completely unintentional. That really developed its own life, so this wasn't planned. But I mean, it's amazing that we get to show it in LACMA. Hello at MoMA. Hello, it's like, whoa, it's awesome for us. So, but yeah, unintentional. You couldn't plan this, I don't think.
I also wanted to talk to you about the work of Jeffrey Shaw. Jeffrey Shaw created a work called Eligible. Eligible is once again a very, very good example of how the artist and the audience and the viewer can interact. In this case, the viewer, a person, an individual, placed that's wandering in a museum or an art gallery, is becoming the actor of the artwork. You will see Eligible is an artwork where somebody is sitting on a bicycle, on a bike, mostly an electric bike, and because of what he's doing, the artwork is being created at the same time. So Jeffrey Shaw for this is really, really a good example of how nowadays and even before, more and more artists decided to actually place the audience, place the viewer inside the artwork, or even ask the viewer and any individual to be a part of it. So let's have a look at the work of Jeffrey Shaw. Interactive art is not something new. We already know, we can see that the earliest artwork, interactive artwork, has been made by Marcel Duchamp in 1920s. It's called rotary glass plates. This artwork required the viewer to turn on a machine and to be placed at a distance of 1 meter to see an optical illusion. So even Marcel Duchamp, who is known as revolutionized the art world, was at this time already asking the viewer to be a part of the artwork, and in this case to be actually the person who is actually turning on the machine and actually be a part of the action, the part of the optical illusion that will be shown in front of him. We saw in the fourth class, about 40, the impact and how video can be everywhere nowadays. When you go to an art gallery, when you go to a museum, you see video installation a lot nowadays. As I told you, the last Biennale in Shanghai, I think that more than 50% of the artwork exhibited during this Biennale was actually a video and video installation. But of course, the new technology shows that some artists decided to project their video not only inside the gallery or inside the museum, once again, but to show it outside. And we will talk about what we call video mapping. Video mapping is actually, technology-wise, it's very interesting. These are some artists who decided to project their video on a specific object or building, most of the time a building, outdoor. And so for that, they asked the blueprint of the architect, and with algorithm and with a lot of very technological process and softwares, they manage to project a video that interact and that actually suit the body of the monuments they are projecting in. So let's have a look at some very interesting video mapping. Video mapping being more and more popular because, once again, this is art that only not created for the people who wants to go to the art gallery or the museum, but this is for absolutely everybody. You might be walking on the street one evening, wandering around, and then suddenly you see a lot of people, thousands and hundreds of thousands of people, and then you see suddenly video projected on a cathedral, on a church, on a building, and then you're like, wow, I had no idea this was happening tonight, but I'm an actor, I'm the audience of this event. So let's have a look of what video mapping really is and some very amazing and beautiful example of video mapping. So we saw during this class how artists are trying to really push the limits of art and how art is represented. We see how not only the questions can be asked, not only what does art mean, but where art can be placed, or what art can do, what can art if I place this art in a certain environment, in front of a certain crowd, what will be the result? What will be the achievement? If an artwork can be achieved only because of the audience, what are the impacts on this audience? So we saw that with all these major artists, such as Marina Abramovich, Jeffrey Shaw, or Yayoi Kusama, or even Thomas, or even Leandro Elrich, and all these people, the Rain Room, we saw the importance nowadays of the interaction between the viewer and the artwork. And for most people, for people who actually are not interested in art, it's actually very, very interesting for them, because they are witnessing an art piece where actually they were not expecting to see any art. It's also a different way of actually understanding what art is, and it also shows that art can be not only for a certain kind of people, but can be for absolutely everybody. It was actually the case for street art. Graffiti artists were actually painting not on a canvas and putting their canvas in a museum or in a gallery. They were actually painting for everybody. We saw that during the second class with Jean-Michel Basquiat and Keith Haring. That was doing some graffiti art in the subway in New York, or on the walls in New York City. That art can be viewed by everybody and not only for a little amount of people. So I hope you find this class interesting, and I hope that you enjoyed it. And I will see you on the last class, the class number 6. And thank you again for watching, and goodbye.